everyone, and welcome to Spark. I'm Joanne Tabalea-Murphy. We have a brilliant guest today, and I'm so excited for you to listen what she has to say. Her name is Nikki Irvin, and she's the managing director of Civil Society Fellowship. And she's going to tell us a little bit of what that organization is about. But it is a leadership program at the Aspen Institute, and it's aimed towards building our nation's next gen of community leaders and problem solvers. So this is going to be very interesting. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Joanna. Very nice to meet you.
Oh, thanks. Will you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Great, and I apologize. It's Joanne, not Joanna, right?
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to be with you today, Joanne, and I'm sitting here in my living room in Los Angeles and have the honor of directing a national fellowship, which is a partnership between the Anti-Defamation League and the Aspen Institute, both national organizations very much committed to the good society and to a future without bias, without hate, without xenophobia. And in 2018, we announced the opportunity for next generation leaders in civil society to become a part of this experience. And last year in 2019, we announced our first cohort, which is comprised of 21 leaders from various sectors in civil society, for everything from community organizers to people in the faith community and law enforcement, philanthropy. We are open to just about every expression of leadership within civil society. And our goal is really to create an opportunity for people from different ideologies, different political backgrounds to engage in healthy civil discourse. We need a tradition in this country where we're able to hear each other and to respect differences in tradition, differences in values, differences in opinions. And so our civil societies spend about 3 years going through week-long seminars that are text-based and expertly moderated. And in this experience, which happens in places like Aspen and DC, Amsterdam, Israel, and Montgomery, Alabama, they have a chance to really confront and deepen their inquiry with their own values and to hear and listen to people who think differently and live differently than them. So it's been an amazing journey. It's still very new, but I'm really honored to be the director of this experience.
So for our audience, can you explain the difference between social justice and criminal justice? There's a lot of terms that are being thrown around right now. So help me understand that.
Sure. Let's see if we can unpack that a bit. And I don't purport to be, the world's expert on this, but I would define social justice as a large effort that really seeks to bring justice to populations who have traditionally and historically been exempted from the privilege of being included in laws. I'll give you maybe a graphic and sad example that, in the wake of the centuries, 250 years of legal enslavement in the United States, one of the legacies of that was that the descendants of slaves were not considered full human beings. They were considered 3/5 of a human being. And this was encoded in the law, in the law of this country. And so a social justice effort coming out of this is an effort to actually realize the full rights of being a human being in this country. And so there have been social justice efforts over the centuries and over the decades to realize the full rights and privileges and responsibility, whether they're voting rights or being able to go to a restroom, being able to sit at a lunch counter, being able to wear one's hair naturally in a workplace. And so social justice, which we see expressed vividly today in the wake of the murders of Trayvon Martin and more recently of George Floyd, for example, are efforts to really kind of enact both law and everyday practice to give people a chance to enjoy justice in a country that celebrates the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. We're coming up on the 4th of July this week, and many of us know that the Declaration of Independence talks about inalienable rights, and yet sadly not all populations have been able to enjoy that. I was just reflecting on the fact that after Pearl Harbor, Japanese Americans were sequestered and moved out of their homes and businesses into camps after Pearl Harbor, and actually enjoyed reparations from President Reagan as an apology, and actually some payments for the fact that they lost homes and businesses and livelihood during that period. So social justice is a cry from many populations in our country: women, LGBTQ trans populations, disabled populations, Latino immigrant populations, and certainly descendants of slaves, African Americans. So I'm just so excited to see young people getting involved in social justice.
More nimble in finding solutions. So when it comes to civil society, through that lens, in order to build a civil society, are we there yet? What do we need to do to get there? And if this next generation of leaders are nimble, they sound like they're better equipped than somebody like me.
Yeah.
And my generation.
What do we need to do to get there? What a great question. I know one thing is going to be listening a lot more, being patient, being willing to listen to these next geners. If they were lucky enough to go to college, they are graduating with mountains of debt. They don't necessarily want to have a car. They're, Uber, Lyft, walking, biking. They're willing to, to endure things that we didn't have to endure, me graduating in the middle 1980s. The thing that I hope we won't have to do more of is die. We've seen, heartbreaking examples of Americans, African Americans in particular, dying at the hands of the people who we've hired to protect us. And this is what's, pushing us into these urgent protests and urgent displays, of just desperation, sometimes expressed as looting even. And, people are not going to burn their houses and communities down unless they feel they have absolutely nothing to lose. And so I hope that, the examples we're seeing of reform, whether it's, the state of Mississippi deciding it's going to lower its flag because it realizes it's a symbol that connotes a bygone era of hate and intolerance and violence, and that's not good for that state. It's not good for our country. I hope that we realize we have an opportunity to mend old harms, atone, apologize, and seek to find a better future. And I think that comes through a lot of listening, a lot of truth-telling, reconciliation, and a willingness to examine what's working, to do the soul searching that the country has to do, across generations. The old listening to the young listening to the old. We have a lot to learn from each other.
To ask you, one of them is, what can businesses and companies do to help communities heal, from your perspective?
Well, thank you for that question. One thing, I have a number in my head. One thing just off the top of my mind is to listen to employees who are right there, who you're employing, and hopefully the employee population is diverse. And if not, then this is a great opportunity, no time like the present, to address that. But listen inside to employees, to their needs. Sometimes it's a matter of adjusting what the workday looks like. Sometimes it means allowing a working mother to come in a little later because she's got to, take care of her aging mother or take care of her young children. So thinking about hours differently and cleverly, is not a very original idea, but it's a powerful one to help people recover time in such a demanding era. Looking at things like logos and mascots, policies that may be very injurious and quite frankly disrespectful to communities are important. The fact that Nike decided to honor Juneteenth. Juneteenth been going on for 150 years, and I know Nike's not 150 years old, but to be able to say, I see you, I recognize you, is a major thing. And of course, that set off a chain reaction where many corporations recognized Juneteenth. And as the daughter of a Texan who's been celebrating Juneteenth for a lot of years, we noticed that. Looking at where, their business to business opportunities, and Walmart as the largest buyer of so many different commodities, I imagine has a supplier diversity policy. In fact, one of our fellows' spouse works, I think, in that arena. And so these are powerful ways you can express, commitment, and even as an act of reparation, I would say. That's important to acknowledge in this time. I, have worked in philanthropy for the last 20 years, and we've encouraged foundations to look at the way they're investing, making grants, and also looking at not just the money itself, but the way the money is invested. Are you requiring people to fill out reams and reams of applications? Can you short circuit that? Can you make it less of a binary win-lose? Can you workshop it in a way that's more collaborative and more communal, and that recognizes the traditions of community in communities of color? So making things a lot less onerous and making things easier. There's so many ways. And then just asking community, what do you need in this time? What can we do?
I can't express how curious I am now about discovering more about what you're doing. So I'm going to be following you. Thank you again. We appreciate you being our guest today. Thanks to our audience for listening and learning with us as well. Don't forget to follow me, Joanne Tabalea Murphy, on Twitter and LinkedIn for the latest Spark updates. Thank you for sharing your spark, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Joanne. It's been great. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say to all of your listeners, if they're curious about the Civil Society Fellowship, we welcome their interest at civilsocietyfellowship.org. Nominations will be opening late this year, and we are keen on finding Americans between 25 and 45, particularly those in the middle of our country who may not have a coast. So
love it. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah.